All right, big fat Friday edition of Idaho Sports Talk. You're just getting off work. You're a 9-to-5er. You're in your rig. You're heading home, and you're getting ready for a jam-packed sports weekend. You got Boise State basketball tomorrow, 11 a.m., and then count them, four NFL divisional playoff round football games. Legends will be confirmed. Careers, coaches will be immortalized, and we have our guest, Dirk Koetter, our playoff correspondent, who's a veteran of this round many times over, to help us through it. What's going on, Coach? Welcome back.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? I don't. Probably no one wants to listen. I was wrong on so many games last week. Probably no one wants to listen to this segment.
Coach, I got one right. I got the first one right and thought I was a rock star. Ball game got two right. How many did you get right out of the six?
I think I was 3-3.
Well, at least you're smarter than us.
So
That's good.
No, that's still, geez, it's. I started off bad on that. I was thinking Cleveland was going to
Me too.
play a little tougher at Houston, but man, Houston looked great last week.
Yeah, they did. I'll start you right off there, Coach Koetter. And I mean, if I'm looking at this game, Coach, where it's Houston at Baltimore. Either a star is going to be confirmed in Lamar Jackson, or a star is going to be born in C.J. Stroud. I love the quarterback matchup here. How does Dirk Koetter see the first game of the weekend tomorrow?
Well, I hope I can answer both to that question, because I think Stroud has had an incredible rookie year, no matter what happens tomorrow. And Carolina is kicking themselves for not taking him with that first pick, that they gave up all that to move up and take maybe the wrong guy. But I'm riding all the way with the Ravens. I'm close with Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, rooting hard for him, what he's done with the offense. They've always been a good defensive team. Coach Harbaugh is a special teams guy at heart, so they're solid there. They're rested. They might see a little bit of rust early, but I also think Houston, being a dome team, going up and playing, it's supposed to be, I think, around 25 degrees at game time tomorrow. That's definitely going to be a factor as well. So I think two great quarterbacks, but I'm going to have to go with the Ravens.
Dirk Koetter, our NFL playoff correspondent, will do it every Friday through the NFL playoffs, leading all the way up to the Friday before the Super Bowl. Coach, when you went to Tampa Bay, part of your task was to take care of Jameis Winston, and part of that was between the years as well. The dude was so stinking talented. Here comes Lamar Jackson, so talented, but he's got this postseason bugaboo and this postseason rep. So when he steps on that field tomorrow, there's going to be a little between the ears action. How do you coach a football player, a superstar like Lamar Jackson, to be better between the ears when the stage is so shiny like it is right now?
Yeah, I think they'll be telling Lamar to just do the same thing he's done during the regular season. And if you followed the Ravens at all this year, you know that they've given Lamar Jackson a lot more freedom at the line of scrimmage to get him into and out of better plays than were called in the huddle. He's relied less on his running ability, more on his passing ability, more on his scrambling ability. What he does a really good job of is keeping his eyes downfield and keeping plays alive, throwing the ball. But I think they'll just be telling him, do what you have done during the regular season. Don't feel like you have to win the game by yourself. Continue to distribute the ball to your other playmakers, and that we have a good enough team. You don't have to be a one-man show out there.
I'm going to go to tomorrow night's game, Saturday night on Fox, Green Bay at San Francisco. No two NFL teams have played more playoff games versus each other than the Packers and the Niners. So cool matchup here, Dirk Koetter. It's like you're back at Kezar Stadium, probably where your San Francisco State Gators played or something back in the day, Coach. How does Green Bay, can they make San Francisco very uncomfortable? If so, how so? How can they make this thing a game?
Well, their offense is on fire right now. I mean, no one's hotter in the entire league than Jordan Love. They just looked fantastic. What I think you have to really think about was as good as Green Bay was Dallas also that bad last week? Dallas picked a bad week to play poorly on both sides of the ball. Couldn't stop the run, couldn't tackle well. The Niners on defense are much more equipped to stop the run.
Yep.
I think the Packers are also on a short week. 49ers rested, 49ers at home. Even though I think the Packers, it's been well documented, the youngest team in the league, but I think their playoff run comes to an end tomorrow.
Coach, Kyle Shanahan at his most recent press conference said something that is getting a lot of steam on social media, and I don't think it's as disrespectful as people are saying, but Kyle Shanahan said midway through the second quarter of the Green Bay-Dallas game, he instructed all of his staff members, quit looking at Dallas for next week. We're playing the Packers. He started a half early. Is that disrespectful? I don't think so.
No, that's not disrespectful, because, if the game would have gone the other way, then, he would have had to eat crow on that, and it would have fallen back on him. So, that's certainly in his realm of responsibility to make that call, because everybody that's waiting to see who they play in the next round is trying to get a jump on it. And believe me, the people down the totem pole that are breaking down all the film and putting all the cut-ups together, they're sick of breaking down two teams. They want to get to one.
Exactly.
Dirk Koetter joining us right here on Idaho Sports Talk. By the way, Coach, we got a big surprise for you here in a minute. So, so brace yourself for that one. Yeah, I know you don't like surprises, but we got one for you. And I did want to throw you a little bit of curveball, because you mentioned Dallas, and this is a serious question about that Green Bay-Dallas game. And just in terms of what Jerry Jones did, keeping Mike McCarthy, that's a great debate. I'd love to hear your side of that. Did Jerry Jones make the right decision keeping Mike McCarthy?
Well, because there's only 32 NFL owners in the world, really nobody else but those 32 guys get a vote in what they do.
Yeah. And
it almost seems to me like Jerry Jones was saying, I'm going to show you I took a $140 million investment in the Cowboys and turned it into a $9 billion franchise. And I'm not going to let anybody else, I'm not going to let any kind of public pressure tell me what to do. I do think the Cowboys turned a lot of people off, a lot of their fans off, by, after the announcement yesterday, having Coach McCarthy do his press conference, when some of the things he said in that press conference, where he said we have a championship culture here, just not a world championship culture. I didn't like the sound of that.
No.
And then I just didn't think they did themselves any favors with the PR piece of it. 12 wins, 3 straight seasons. There's something to be said for that. But I think most people would agree that when we're down to these final teams, that the Cowboys are probably closer to the middle of the league right now than they are closer to being the Super Bowl champs.
All right, Dirk Koetter with us. Buccaneers at Lions. Baker Mayfield's playing maybe the best he's played since college. The Lions, what Dan Campbell has built. Speaking of cultures there, Detroit's a 6.5-point favorite at home. Coach, your Bucs, Lions, what's going to happen here? What do you think the big matchup is to pay attention to?
Well, that was one of the games I missed last week. I thought the Rams would get the Lions. Now,
almost
they did cover. They did cover that 3-point spread if you had cheese on it.
I did.
So, the two really good stories. The Bucs were picked to have a terrible season. It is pretty cool to see what Baker Mayfield's doing and how the team has bought into him. Of course, I love the two receivers in Evans and Godwin. Those are two of the few guys that are left from when I was there. But Detroit, how about that crowd last week? They were so into it. Detroit can run the ball. They can throw it. Goff's playing well. Coach Campbell's liable to pull a fake out at any time. Aaron Glenn, another former player of ours, is doing a great job as the Detroit DC. Now, Detroit is not strong in the secondary, and so I think that'll help Tampa. But I do think Detroit's a better team.
I'm curious as to what you think about Dan Campbell. I would assume there's massive amounts of respect. He does it differently than you do. He rides that emotion and just the way he is. In your opinion, take the roster and everything out of it. Is that style sustainable in an NFL football team?
I think it is, because he's got credibility as a former player. I think if I was to try to have that style, and I don't think a Kellen Moore, a guy that was a quarterback, for example. But Dan Campbell, he was a tough guy when he was a player. He was a blocking tight end. He was a self-made player. So I think he's being true to who he really is. And I remember all my time in the NFL. For most of that time, he was an assistant for Sean Payton with the Saints, and he was a guy that his guys always played tough. They played like he is. So I don't think there's anything phony about him. So I do think in his case it is sustainable.
Coach, marquee matchup. What is it? 4:30 Mountain Time, CBS. We'll be airing this thing. It's Mahomes at Josh Allen, and for me, this is as close as we're going to get this era to a Manning versus Brady type of. You almost expect it annually this type of year. Coach Koetter, man, where's your head with Chiefs Bills?
Yeah, wow. I mean, if the Bills, this is their chance. A lot of people were thinking it was going to be the Bengals with Joe Burrow that were going to be the team to overtake the Chiefs. The Chiefs have definitely had a down year on offense. The Chiefs defense now, they're legit. And everybody wrote Buffalo off mid-season. Heck, they were even talking about firing Sean McDermott. There was one Monday night or Sunday night game where I think they were saying he was playing for his job. They made a change at offensive coordinator. They've definitely turned it around. The Bills are a little beat up on defense. I think whichever quarterback can stay within the system. I thought both of these quarterbacks stayed within their system last week, and they both played maybe their best games of the year. I think one of these guys, both of these quarterbacks at times have had to try to do a little too much and put the teams on their back, and that could lead to turnovers. When the Bills have lost, it's been because of turnovers. Same thing with the Chiefs. So, and I think this is going to be a great one. I'd love to see that ball go to Shakir a little more. Man, what a play he made. Maybe the best play of the whole weekend on that run to ice it last week. Man, this is a toss-up. I do not know which way to go.
Yeah.
But it should be a fun one for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned Khalil. I was going to ask you about that, and I'm assuming based on what you just said, you've seen enough of him to form some kind of an opinion or how much you knew him here at Boise State. If you're an NFL scout and you're sitting down to write a 100-page or 100-word report on Khalil Shakir and what he brings to the table and how you have to worry about it and defend him, what are you saying about Khalil Shakir and what he does on the field?
Yeah, excellent body control, toughness, run after the catch. He's proven the moment's not too big with him, too big for him. Think about Shaq, a fifth-round pick, Nakua from the Rams, a fifth-round pick. Wow. And again, I mentioned this last week. Yeah. We all here in Boise remember what Nakua did to us in that Boise State BYU game on the blue.
Yeah.
But I thought Shaq went a little bit later in the draft. I thought maybe he would go as high as the third round if people really did their homework. As I said, tremendous body control. He'll go over the middle. He can break tackles. Heck, he could be there. They have a good return guy. He could easily be their returner if they needed him to. And, they brought some other big name guys into Buffalo, but I think they're going to have a hard time beating him out. And I'm sure they feel like they got a steal in the fifth round.
All right, we're stretching the surprise out a little bit. I got one more serious question before we hit you with this surprise. But as you probably heard, Pierce is now the Raiders coach. They pulled the trigger there and made that happen. I wanted to ask about him and the job that he did and that non-traditional approach that he took to getting this job. More importantly, I wanted to ask because there's lots of reports out there today on social media that Marvin Lewis, who I think has been with him as an analyst or a consultant or whatever, may join his staff as an official coach. I don't know how officially true that is, but Marvin Lewis getting back into the league potentially, and I know you're close with him from your Idaho State days. Pierce and Lewis together in Vegas?
Yeah, I think so. They were together at Arizona State. Pierce was the D coordinator. Marvin, including even this last season, has been working as an analyst at Arizona State just to stay involved in the game. Once Arizona State's season was over, the Raiders were bringing him in. I think a couple of times he would go on Monday, come back on Thursday, but he did stay for the finale. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's very, very high on Antonio Pierce, another former player. who did it, as a player, and the players there at the Raiders have bought into him. And Marvin's just one of those guys who's a lifer. He's had both knees replaced, both hips replaced.
Wow.
I think he lives for football and golf. And I'm sure his wife, Peggy, is not voting for it. But if I was a betting man, I would say Marvin shows up on the Raiders staff.
That's pretty cool, man. Dirk Koetter with us. Okay, let's get to the surprise, Coach. And, there's a lot of players that you coached early on, especially at Boise State, that had a big responsibility in helping you get to where you were. And I would imagine that Quentin Michael was one of those guys for you, Coach. We had Q on this program yesterday, okay? And he shared a Dirk Koetter NFL story with us that we wanted to play for you, and we wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it on the back end. You're familiar with one Quentin Michael, correct, Coach?
Absolutely.
JP, roll it.
I remember talking to him before the game, and I might have told the story before, and he's like, yeah, how things going? And this is when I was in St. Louis. So things are good. And then he's like, yeah, okay. And as we broke up before we broke up and went to the locker room before the game starts, he's like, yeah, we'll try to get you later in the game. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, what the heck does that mean? So first play, second half, double move, Roddy White right on me down the middle of the field. I was like, oh, that's what he meant to try to get me.
No.
Set me up the whole first half and then ran a double move on me with Roddy White for a bomb for a touchdown. I'm like, okay, thanks, Coach.
Did you get him afterwards?
Yeah. I didn't get to see him. I was so angry. I just went into the locker room. I was embarrassed.
Coach Koetter, you did that to someone who was so instrumental in your rise as a coach. You needed Q. He anchored your defense. Coach, you had the goods on him. You probably ran that double move in practice for 2 years with Bart Hendricks throwing the ball, and you nabbed him in the NFL. Coach Koetter.
Well, probably ran a double move on him because I've seen him make so many interceptions throughout his career, and I knew if you got too close to him, he was going to take it and go the other way.
I love it.
Quentin's one of those. I think I've told you guys this story before. When I came here from Oregon, we had Quentin in the Oregon football camp. He's from right there in Eugene, and he didn't run a great 40 time. He didn't run a great 40 time at the camp. And they'd kind of written him off at Oregon as a scholarship player. But another former Oregon player was coaching him there at the high school, was a receiver coach, the DB coach. And me and Coach Pete actually were talking to this guy, and he goes, hey, man, I'm just telling you, this Quentin Michael is legit. So as soon as I got to Boise State, I called him up and said, yeah, Oregon doesn't think you're good enough, but I think you're good enough to come to Boise State. And it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, Dirk, do you agree with me? I've always said between Quentin Michael, Marcel Yates, Shenard Hartz, and then maybe a couple of years later, Jerron Johnson, those four guys really changed the way Boise State played in the secondary. They brought physicality to what I thought was a pretty soft secondary when you showed up, and those four guys really brought a mentality that changed Boise State football. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think they did, and I didn't get a chance to coach Jerron Johnson. But the other thing about Quentin that people forget, remember how good he was as a punt returner. Like, Quentin would be pissed if he had to fair catch it. Like, if it was just such a good kick, and he would. And then Hawk was coaching special teams there. Like, between Hawk and Quentin, they were thinking every punt return was going to go for 6.
Oh yeah.
And he was fearless as a punt returner, and definitely a hitter and an intimidator in the back end. And we were lucky we got Marcel when Pacific shut down the football program. We lucked into getting Marcel. And Shenard, he had played all over the field. He'd been a running back. He'd been a wide receiver. But Shenard, as tough a player as I was ever around. That was a one tough dude right there.
Yeah, when you put him in those safety blitz situations, I had never seen that before. I had covered Boise State since '94, and I don't know, he got a half dozen sacks I think his last year. You'd put him on the kind of what we have now is the stud or the edge or whatever you want to call it. And he was phenomenal. And then obviously went off into the Chiefs and had a decent little career in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure did. And he was just a rock solid, but he had the speed of a tailback, and he was, he just had instincts to run and hit. It was a see ball, hit ball, and he was pretty good at it.
I love it, Coach. Hey, Quentin Michael, by the way, is back in town. He's got his family here. He's going to be doing some stuff, we hope, with KTIK moving forward. So we'll have to get a little get together at some point and get you and Q together again, huh?
I got to spend some time with him at. They introduced Spencer Danielson as the new coach. I ran into Q, and he's coaching high school football out in Meridian at one of the high schools out there, and that school is lucky to have him because he's a good human being, and we're very fortunate to have him back at Boise.
You going to the game tomorrow, Coach? Boise State, San Diego State. I know you love your hoops.
Yeah, I do. I am going to go. The only other game I was at in person was Colorado State, and that was a big win for the Broncos. So I'm going with my buddy Scott Butterfield tomorrow, and we'll be rooting for Coach Rice and the Broncos.
Absolutely, Coach. We'll talk next week and get ready for conference championship weekend. Good stuff as always.
All right, guys, have a great weekend.
And that's why you listen to Idaho Sports Talk. Prater the Ballgame right here on KTIK, The Ticket.
From the Beacon Plumbing Traffic Studios.